structuralism. Introduction. In the previous study session, we examined the theory of Marxism as a theory of international relations. In this study session, we will examine the theory of structuralism and its basic assumptions. Learning outcomes. When you have studied this study session, you should be able to explain the assumptions of structuralism. Structuralism theory. Structuralism is a theory of international relations which stresses the impacts of world economic structures on the political, social, cultural, and economic life of countries. Structuralists argue that global economic relations are structured in such a way that it benefits only certain social classes, and this makes the international system to be fundamentally unjust. I guess that sounds familiar to you, considering that we just examined Marxism in the previous lecture. It is useful to note that structuralism is not the same as Marxism, but it is clearly based on Marxist ideas. Or put differently, structuralism is inspired by Marxism in its approach to international relations. Marxism is often dismissed as ideological, but the structuralists make their claim on the basis of what they regard as scientific analysis. Structuralist theory of international relations stresses the impact of world economic structures on the political, social, cultural, and economic life of countries. Structuralism looks at the structure of the world capitalist system, which is seen as interconnected sets of social, economic, and political relations, which collectively constitute a structure. According to the structuralists, the contemporary world order is constituted by a global capitalist system and a corresponding interstate system. A fundamental feature of this order is inequality. According to them, the world is divided between the haves and the have-nots. Relations between states are structured hierarchically between those who are wealthy and powerful, which they refer to as the core, and those who are poor and without much influence, which they refer to as the periphery. There is also a horizontal structure of class relationship between the elites in both the core and periphery countries. The elites of the core and periphery countries share fundamental interests in supporting the present system because they actually benefit from the exploitation of the other social groups. The world is divided between the haves and the have-nots. Relations between states are structured hierarchically between those who are wealthy and powerful, which they refer to as the core, and those who are poor and without much influence, which they refer to as the periphery. Capitalism is based on the exploitation of the poor by the rich. In pursuing their class interests, the rich, that is the peoples and the states, are able to maintain their position by their exploitation of the poor. This is caused by an essentially unjust system based on structure and characterized by inequality. Thus, in line with Marxism, many structuralists see classes as the dominant actors in international relations, despite the importance of states. They see the states as the instrument used to bring about the rule of dominant classes, a channel for class oppression, or as a relatively autonomous entity, which plays an important role in facilitating capitalist expansion and supporting an unjust order. In other words, while the world is divided into rich and poor countries, there is a need to examine how classes promote their interests and how they use the state to help them. Structuralists also dismiss the interdependence notion of liberalism. They argue that this will imply that a balance and fairness exist in the international system, which is not so. They point to the way in which the institutions of the state, that is, the law courts, the police, the military, and the economic system, work to protect the interests of the already powerful. Structuralism examines carefully the role of institutional actors such as the World Bank and IMF to see how they help legitimize and maintain existing structures. It claims that processes of capital accumulation, the extraction of surplus value, and exploitation can be measured objectively. Therefore, structuralism can be described as scientific approach within the study of international relations. Although the state is central to structuralism, it is viewed differently from the realist or liberal perspectives. Instead of seeing the state as a sovereign power representing the interests of the people, the structuralists see the state as reflecting the interests of the dominant social classes. Basic assumptions of structuralism. We can summarize the assumptions of the structuralists as follows. 1. The nature of international relations is profoundly shaped by the structure of the capitalist world economy or capitalist world system. 2. International politics is shaped by or even determined by economic factors. 3. The main actors in international politics are states, multinational and transnational corporations, and transnational social classes. 4. The state reflects the interests of dominant classes rather than the existence of a genuine national interest. 5. Capitalism is a fundamentally unjust social and economic order which generates conflict and disharmony. 6. Capitalism is characterized by internal contradictions and is subject to periodic crises. Stearns and Pettiford, 2005. International politics is shaped by economic factors. Discuss this assumption of the structuralists in explaining interactions on the global level. Post your contributions on Studies Session 4 forum page on course websites. Study session summary. In this study session, you learned that structuralism is an offshoot of Marxism theory. It emphasizes both inequality and the structural reasons for this at the international level. Also, it argues that the global economy is structured by class interest to the benefit of some and the disadvantage of others. Finally, the state is seen as an instrument of the powerful to oppress the poor. With this, we come to the end of study session 7.